I think that a lot of Black brands already do prioritize inherently other Black consumers, just given the nature of most Black, well, I wouldn't say most, but I know many Black brands have been started off the fact that there was something in the market that did not exist that catered to Black consumers, whether it was a hair product or a skin product or whatever the case may be. So they were prioritizing consumers and thinking about producing that product. So I think that it needs to be a priority. No, I feel like you can create a product that addresses a wider need that's not specific to Black people. So I feel like if you're a Black owned makeup beauty brand, you shouldn't have to prioritize Black women when making that as a Black woman, but you should be inclusive of Black women in that product. But you don't have to specifically say, I'm only focusing on women of color, because then I think you leave women out of that market and you leave money on the table, which ultimately over time hurts your business. So I feel like we should be inclusive and thoughtful of other women, Black women, or Black people in general, depending on the product. But I don't think that it needs to be prioritized to solely focus on Black people.
I do think that when we think about like the word priority, I think that's the key to this question is what should Black owned businesses or business owners prioritize? And I think the first thing that Black owned businesses should prioritize is sustaining, right? Like that should be the number one thing. There are so many Black owned businesses that we see that we want to support that after a year, because there were not the best business practices, or because they did things that left money on the table, or because they weren't operating efficiently, or because they couldn't scale, or for whatever reason, their business was not able to sustain. So when you have Black owned businesses where it's kind of like the first thing that they're thinking about is like, okay, a specific sector, instead of thinking about how can I get the best business practice possible to make sure that I sustain, I think that that's like the first thing that they should be prioritizing. So sustaining. The second thing that I think should be the priority in life is first you figure out how to survive, then you figure out how to thrive, right? So it's saying, hey, how do I sustain initially? And then after you figure out that, then okay, how do I grow, right? I think that when it comes to this situation as Black people who have been underserved, we do have to think big picture, because when you have Black owned businesses that survive, then they thrive, long term, they're able to better serve you, right? They're able to build better businesses, whether it's restaurants, products, they're able to develop more products. They're able to develop products in a way where they're not going to be out of stock, right? Or you're not going to go into the restaurant and they're going to be like, oh, we don't have that, right? Anymore. So I think that that's the number one priority. So that's my thought initially. I think that what you said could be like kind of misconstrued by some people though, right? Because when you kind of say the idea of inclusivity, I think that would probably be something that could rub a lot of people the wrong way, to be honest with you.
I get what you're saying, and let me address that, because it's not...
I want to give you an opportunity to address that first.
I think that when you go into business, any smart business person, doesn't matter what color you are, is going to be thinking about how, even if I'm coming out with a hot comb product, and that's something very specific to Black people, right? Like, so if that's the case and you're coming out with a hot comb, all right, you know what your market's going to be, and you know that ultimately you're going to have a specific reach throughout your career. You're not going to have, like a huge growth at some point where suddenly like there's going to be a huge spurt in people needing hot combs. You know where you're going to be. Like, you have a general market and that's what you're going to be reaching. If you're coming out with a product and you sit there and you say, going back to the beauty product, where you're like, well, we don't have high pigmented colors for people of color, right? Like high pigmented makeup, right? That looks better on our skin, that does whatever this thing. So I'm going to come out with a line that addresses that. You're talking about Fenty or something like that. Cool. You can come out with a product that has multiple shades of colors that aren't addressed in the mainstream market, multiple shades of color, but you should already be thinking about, hey, ultimately, if I'm going to reach more people long term, if I'm going to try to grow my audience long term, I should be going into the market with hey, starting with the white shades all the way to the black shades. It's not, being inclusive doesn't mean that you're being exclusive of black people. You're still going to be offering something that other brands aren't offering. You're still offering multiple shades and deeper shades that aren't on the market already. You're just throwing in some other shades on the other end, just to make sure that you're able to sustain that long term. You already have a wide mainstream market. I feel like that's something we should be thinking about. It doesn't matter if it sounds good or not, but like at the end of the day, that's going to be what keeps your business going, is having a wider market that's going to reach more people than just saying, I'm only going to focus on this spectrum, right? And then hope that they continue to support me throughout my career.